This afternoon to our concert performance, and as part of the celebration of remembering the Battle of Fayetteville and celebrating Headquarters House and the fact that we have this fine facility here to be, such a part of our culture here in Fayetteville. We're the Northwest Arkansas Heritage Brass Ensemble, and we're a mix of musicians from various places all over Northwest Arkansas. And our goal is to share historic brass band music with the public as much as we possibly can. The piece you just heard is called the Southern Rights March. Originally written in the mid-1850s, it was reissued and dedicated to General Sterling Price of the Missouri State Guard and later Confederate service as a tune that would honor him and what he had done. So it's interesting to find that it was originally written several years before the war. Those ideas were already there about Southern rights and everything. And so anyway, I just throw that out there. Some of the pieces that we're going to play today come from the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band books. That band was attached to the Army of Northern Virginia. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about them really quickly, and then we're going to play something else of local importance. But the 26th that we've gotten much of this from, they're a group of Moravian musicians. Moravians were pacifists, and they were all from Salem, North Carolina. They enlisted into the Confederate service as a band with the understanding they would never pick up arms, they would only play music or help in a hospital situation. And their music survives today because the Moravian Church would collect all of these written materials and publish them and have made them available. So I'll be telling you about those pieces. Most of what you'll hear from us that come from their book is pop music of the time. What we just played would be very much pop music of the time also. You'll hear some military music today, but a lot of it is what the soldiers would have enjoyed hearing in camp, or what you would have heard at your local town square when the local brass band was playing. The next piece we're going to play is a local piece. It's actually the first piece published by someone living in Arkansas, and it is the Fayetteville Polka. You may have heard this before. It was written by Ferdinand Zellner. Zellner was the music teacher at the female seminary here, and actually acquired the facility and was going to run it until the war, and it was burned down. And then he ended up in San Francisco. But he wrote this in the early 1800s and had it published in St. Louis. And it is a traditional Prussian polka of the time. We're going to play it in polka form. The way he wrote it was with lots of repeats. We're going to play it to make it sound like a true polka. But this, again, was dedicated to the ladies of the female seminary and is called the Fayetteville Polka. The next piece is from the 26th North Carolina. It's called Come Dearest, the Daylight Is Gone. It's a traditional waltz of the period. And I want to take this time to tell you why, one of the many reasons we think that this is so important that we keep this music alive. General Lee himself said that he didn't think that an army could exist without music and without a brass band. And it was traditional for all of the units in those days, both North and South, to play brass band music within the regiment. They would have a regimental band that would accompany the Army wherever it went. We know that the 37th Illinois had a band at the Battle of Pea Ridge, and there's documentation of them actually playing tunes, which I'll mention later, before the battle and as the Union Army crossed into Arkansas. So we know that that was something that was even going on out here in the Trans-Mississippi West, which was a remoter, much more remote part of the world at that time than it is now, but they had culture. We had culture. And both Union and Confederate bands were playing the same music. We were one nation divided, and so this music was American music. So what you're about to hear is a traditional waltz called Come Dearest, the Daylight Is Gone. be a little more comfortable and not stand up to the mic the way I was. The next piece I know very well, and I don't need a script to even talk to you folks about this. This is called the Pea Ridge March, and it was written by a composer named Christopher Bach. I have not been able to find any information on this man except that he wrote this march. This piece was first brought to me by Troy Banzoff of Pea Ridge, asking if we could do something with this because he wasn't sure it had been heard in maybe over 100 years or so. So the little bit of research that I've been able to do to find anything basically tells me about the man it was dedicated to more than the piece. General Siegel was a German immigrant. He came to the United States after enjoying a military career in Germany. Came over here, was living in the St. Louis area when hostilities broke out. He got a group of immigrants together as a unit, and they served under first General Lyon. You'll hear some music about him later. And then after General Lyon was killed at Wilson's Creek, he served under General Curtis at the Battle of Pea Ridge. He was a very capable person at self-promotion. Okay? So after the Battle of Pea Ridge, which he did have a lot to do with the second day. The first day of battle, he actually kind of rode around looking for something to do. The second day of the battle, he was involved in the artillery barrage that would really seal the Union victory in that battle. But he also, with the help of some of his friends, made sure everyone back east knew about him. And his fame as the hero of Pea Ridge was such that he was transferred, the right word in military terms, transferred back east, and his career becomes largely boring and insubstantial after he left here. But because of his fame from this piece was written. It's called the Pea Ridge March, and it was dedicated to the heroic General Franz Sigel. And it's really kind of interesting because it's not only dedicated to him, but it's very much a European-style opera overture. It's not a march like you would think of today or like a Sousa march. John Philip Sousa is still 20 years from now, as far as when this piece was written. And the style of march we would think of as a very traditional American march is yet to be heard. Sousa would be really behind all of that. So this is going to sound a little more like parts of the William Tell Overture than it's going to sound like Stars and Stripes Forever. But this is the Pea Ridge March. The next piece became the rallying song of the Union in the second half of the war. This piece, of course, is Battle Hymn of the Republic. It was based on the tune John Brown's Body, which was wildly popular at the time, and Julia Howe wrote the stirring words to Battle Hymn as a way to motivate a nation, really, upon the suggestion of a friend of hers who was a pastor who thought that this was a very appropriate tune and needed a better set of words, so it became the staple. The first half of the war, it would not have been known, and really this was very much a northern song. The Union used this as a rallying cry, and it's a very epic piece of music, so we're going to present that for you in a more modern form than everything else you've heard. This is the one piece we play that's not traditionally arranged or directly from the 26th North Carolina, so this is a little more modern take on this idea. But this is Battle Hymn of the Republic. Now we go back to the 26th, and the next piece we're going to play is called Captain Fortin's Waltz, and it was written in honor of the favorite officer of the 26th Regimental Band of North Carolina, which did serve, as I said earlier, with the Army of Northern Virginia. Captain Fortin helped to write the agreement that the 26th would serve only as either non-combatants, as musicians, or with the hospital. If you've seen the movie Gettysburg, they are portrayed in there as being detached to General Lee. They were his band, and a little bit about them. We're very similar to their makeup. Traditionally, the bands would have at least two on each instrument. They had an E-flat cornet player, which we have Cameron playing E-flat trumpet today, that was the virtuoso player. He was the rock star, if you will, and everybody else was just kind of okay and played along. So they arranged their music to feature him. And a lot of what we play, you'll hear the E-flat playing very independent parts from all the rest of the band, which is exactly what they did. The 26th was actually the second day at Gettysburg, ordered out into the battlefield. And they thought they were going to take up arms, and they were very upset about this. And the general told them, no, you're going to go play music. So in the very middle of the battlefield, all the shelling, all the bullets, everything going on, they played for an extended period of time music that later they found out was heard across the lines by their brothers in blue, because it was written up in northern newspapers that a Confederate band played on the second day of Gettysburg and could be heard. Well, eventually, they were needed back in the hospital, and so they were sent back. And it was fortunate for them because not very long after they left, a shell exploded where the band had been standing. So they were saved by the fact that they were sent back to do some very gruesome work, unfortunately. Fortunately for them, and unfortunately for what they had to see when they went back. But Captain Horton helped to keep them out of combat, and they wrote a piece specifically for him and played this quite often. It's a fairly difficult little waltz, actually, and again, it would feature the really superb members of the group. One more interesting story I will tell you, they were at Petersburg when Petersburg fell. They were in the trenches. They would play music there for the troops, and the bands would exchange instruments. Like if a band was captured, the better instruments were kept by those who captured them. The 26th had all their own instruments. They had been a Moravian band at the Moravian Church in North Carolina for years and years and years before the war, and the instruments had been handed down. The only one that kept his instrument was the cornet player, the E-flat cornet player. He was able to hide his, because the cornet, and E-flat cornet is a very small instrument, he was able to hide it in his haversack. The rest of the band's instruments were confiscated and used by the Union Army. And he kept his after the war, and so they returned home after they were paroled. They were served time in a prison camp in Maryland. After they were paroled and back at home, all the rest of them had to purchase instruments, but he kept his cornet and was still playing it years and years later after the war. But just a little fun story. we're going to go ahead, since we are playing a little bit of an extended concert, we're going to cut some of our music today and play two last tunes. We're going to play Arkansas Traveler, which obviously is an extremely important piece to Arkansas, and then we will close with Dixie and Bonnie Blue Flag. The Dixie Bonnie Blue Flag arrangement that we will play comes directly from the 26th North Carolina. It's how they would have played it and how it would have been heard in the Eastern Theater during the war. Arkansas Traveler, you probably know as the Baby Bumblebee song, if you don't know Traveler. This is taken from the original publication. It's not going to sound exactly the same. There are going to be some differences from what you've heard. And one final little historical note. When the Union Army reached the Arkansas line as it was on its way to what would eventually become the Battle of Elkhorn Tavern or Pea Ridge, they stopped at the line and they played Dixie, and they played Arkansas Traveler as General Curtis rode across the line for their invasion of Arkansas. We also know that 37th Illinois Band is mentioned as having played that, both of those tunes also, as the Union Army came into the battlefield at Leetown as part of the Battle of Pea Ridge. So we know these tunes are completely authentic to being heard here in our area. So we hope you've enjoyed our concert. We thank you so much for coming out, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.